Something brushed against my leg. Light, fragile, trembling, like a broken wing falling to the ground. I froze in the middle of the crowd, in the burning heat of Dallas, with car horns blaring and hurried footsteps pounding the pavement. That touch cut through me like a thin, sharp blade, forcing me to stop. Before I could look down, I felt tiny claws gripping my jeans. Not sharp enough to hurt, but shaking, desperate, clinging. That grip wasn't an accident. It was the grasp of someone drowning, reaching for the last branch in a raging flood. I lowered my eyes, and my heart clenched in an instant. A Doberman puppy, no more than 4, maybe 5 months old, skin and bones, so thin a strong gust of wind could have knocked him over. His ribs jutted through his coat, once sleek but now dull, matted, stained by dust and sun. His long legs quivered, unsteady, as if another second would make them collapse. His ears drooped, lifeless. That tiny body was fighting 2 enemies at once. A fever raging inside him and the scorching Dallas asphalt blazing beneath him. And then I saw his eyes. Amber. Wide open. Pleading. No bark. No whine. No strength left to cry. Just silence, staring at me with a look that clung to its last flicker of hope. Eyes that spoke without words. Please, don't leave me here. He clawed at my leg again, weaker this time. His nails dug into the fabric, not to wound, only to hold, as if letting go meant vanishing into nothing. Around me, life moved on. A woman pushed a stroller, frowned, and crossed to the other side without glancing down. A boy on an e-scooter swerved past, nearly running over the small body at my feet. A man strode by, muttering flatly, "Don't touch it, might be diseased." And then they all dissolved back into the rush, into the noise of the city, cold, indifferent. Dallas kept moving. Only I stood still. My name is Ethan Cole, and in that moment I felt the fragile heartbeat of this small creature thudding against my ankle. Fast, shallow, scattered. A rhythm already fading. I knew with certainty, if I turned my back now, that heartbeat would end forever. I dropped to my knees. The heat of the pavement burned through my jeans, searing my skin. The acrid stench of melting asphalt filled my lungs. My hand hovered in midair. Warnings screamed inside my head. It could be feral. It could be sick, dangerous. Who knows? A dozen voices, loud as the crowd around me, pushed me away. But then, those eyes. Amber eyes cut through every excuse, every wall I had built. They pierced straight into my chest. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard. His ears twitched. His breath came fast, ragged. His chest rose and fell as though it might split. And still, he didn't let go. Tiny claws clung tighter to the denim, clutching me like he was clutching life itself. And I realized, if I walked away, if I turned my face, this image would haunt me for the rest of my life. I would never forgive myself. I drew in a deep breath. Then I slid my hand under his belly. The body was terrifyingly light, like lifting a thin layer of skin stretched over bare bone. One squeeze too firm and I could have snapped him in half. Heat radiated from him like smoldering coals. He flinched, a brief shudder of resistance, and then he gave in. His tiny head dropped against my chest. His breath rattled, weak, uneven. Yet, pressed against me, it seemed to steady, to slow, like he had found a shelter, a fragile moment of peace in a merciless world. I held him close, staring out at the cold stream of people, at the city that didn't care. And I knew, from this moment on, nothing in my life would ever be the same. I stood there, in the searing Dallas sun, cradling the small life in my arms. His body burned with fever, trembling like an ember about to die out. The smell of dust, hot asphalt, and dog fur mixed into something heavy, choking. His heartbeat thudded wildly against my chest, off rhythm, each beat making my hands quiver. A part of me wanted to run straight to the white animal control truck parked down the block, to hand him over. But another part, stronger, fiercer, wouldn't let me let go. People began to notice. A man in a suit stopped, frowned, and jerked his chin at me. "Buddy, put it down. Call animal control. Taking trouble home only brings more of it." A middle-aged woman tightened her grip on a stroller, eyes sharp with suspicion. Her voice came cold and cutting. "Stray dogs carry disease. What if it bites you? Careful, it could have rabies." Behind me, whispers. A young man in a baseball cap smirked, loud enough for me to hear. "A Doberman? That breed's dangerous when it grows up. Only an idiot would bring one home." Each word hit me like a stone to the back. And in their own way, they weren't wrong. Dobermans could grow strong, aggressive without training. I'd heard the stories, and I knew if I turned him over to the shelter, he'd likely end up behind bars by nightfall. A skeletal, fever-ridden pup with the wrong label. Dangerous breed. What chance would he have of surviving even one night? I looked down. Amber eyes blinked open again, clouded with exhaustion but locked on me. One frail paw scraped weakly against my shirt, a last plea. My throat closed tight. The city's noise faded. There was only his gaze, only the frantic, failing heartbeat thumping inside his chest. Two voices battled in my head, one sharp and cold as a blade. "Take him to the shelter. Don't be stupid. They know what to do. You can't save him." The other, raspy, trembling, but fierce. "If you leave him there, he will die, and you will never forgive yourself." I swallowed hard, looked around. Strangers stared at me, skeptical, dismissive, judging. The whole city seemed to whisper, "Don't carry this burden home." I turned back to the pup. His chest heaved, mouth open, gasping so fast I feared he'd stop at any second. Yet those eyes, blurred, tired, still clung to mine. And in that moment, I knew my choice. I whispered, barely loud enough for myself. "No, I'm not leaving you. You've got me now." Someone walking by snorted. "He's lost it." Another voice sneered, "Let's see how long he keeps it." But their words dissolved into the heavy air. I only held the fragile body tighter. When I laid him on the passenger seat, I pulled off my jacket, folded it into a cushion. He curled into it instantly, eyes closing, breath still shallow but less frantic. I reached over and stroked his back. His coat felt rough, brittle. Beneath my hand, heat radiated, scorching, unrelenting. I slid into the driver's seat, fingers gripping the wheel. The voices clashed again in my head. One side, "Take him to the shelter. Don't be insane. You're not capable." The other, "He clung to you, chose you. You are the only chance he has." I turned my head. He stirred faintly, ears drooping. For a moment his eyes flickered open, just a sliver, enough to meet mine. And in that amber haze, I didn't just see despair. I saw trust. Fragile, absurd trust. Placed in me. My chest tightened. A name rose to my lips, clear, as if it had been waiting all along. I leaned down and murmured, "From now on, you'll be Ranger." His eyes fluttered, then closed. A weary breath escaped him, but his paw pressed faintly against the jacket, as if he understood, as if he had accepted the name. I sat there, sweat trailing down my spine. Outside, Dallas blazed, crowded, relentless, unfeeling. But inside that cramped car, I knew my life had already veered onto another road. The road into the Appalachians darkened as I steered the pickup toward the cabin. Evening had settled in, gray clouds draped across the peaks, though the heat of Dallas still clung to my skin. Ranger lay curled on my jacket in the passenger seat, trembling now and then, breath raspy and fast. I glanced at him. Every rise and fall of that fragile chest made my grip on the wheel tighten. A cold thought pressed against my mind. Would he even make it to the cabin alive? As I turned onto the tree-shaded path, the cabin emerged behind a curtain of leaves. 4 walls of weathered wood, a slanted roof, the chimney still cold. This was the place I'd retreated to after losing my way, where I had managed to hold on to a sliver of peace. And now I was bringing here a life balanced on the edge of death. I lifted Ranger into my arms. His body burned, weightless as a dry twig. The door creaked open, the floor groaning beneath my boots. At once, the familiar sound of claws clicking echoed from the hall. Molly. My 10-year-old golden retriever stepped out of the kitchen. Her golden coat caught the fading light. Her tail gave a single wag, then froze as her eyes locked on what I carried. The world went still. Ranger stirred, tried to raise his head, a weak growl rattling from his throat, frail but defiant. Molly lowered her head, ears pricked, eyes sharp as a drawn bow. A bark broke the silence, deep, short, not an attack, but a warning. This is my home. Who is he? I knelt, holding Ranger tight against my chest. Easy, Molly. Easy. I knew her. 10 years by my side, she'd never started a fight, never given me cause for fear. But instinct is instinct. And in that breathless moment, I felt the wire stretch, ready to snap. Ranger trembled, amber eyes wide, forcing out another thin growl as if to prove, I won't give up. 2 worlds collided in the small wooden cabin. Molly's stone-solid loyalty, aged and unyielding, and Ranger's fragile, desperate will to live. And me, caught in the middle, praying my heart was wide enough to hold them both. Seconds dragged like centuries. Then Molly sank lower, sitting back, eyes fixed but unmoving. She didn't lunge. She waited. A silence thick with suspicion. I set Ranger down on the rug by the fireplace. He shook, legs quivering but still fighting to stay upright. Molly edged forward half a step. I raised my hand. It's okay, Molly. He's a friend. My voice shook. I wasn't sure she understood, but I needed to say it. For her, for Ranger, and maybe for myself. The cabin air thickened. Molly stepped closer, nose lowered. Ranger shrank, bracing like prey cornered. For a heartbeat, I thought he would snap. But he didn't. He pressed himself flat, eyes locked on her. I laid my hand on his back, whispering, It's all right. You're safe here. Maybe it was my voice, maybe exhaustion, but something shifted. Ranger let out a long, ragged sigh. His legs buckled, his small frame collapsing onto the rug. Molly backed away, then lowered herself near the fire, ears still alert. Not peace. Not yet. But not war either. That night, I built a fire. Its glow flickered gold and uneasy across the walls. Ranger curled in the corner of the rug, eyes wide at the flames, breathing fast and shallow. Molly lay a few feet away, head on her paws, gaze locked on the fragile figure. And me, caught between them, listening to the crackle of wood, my heart hammering in my chest. Dallas had left me with a decision, but the Appalachians, this cabin, they had handed me a greater test: how to keep both of these souls under one roof. And for a fleeting moment I wondered, was this a miracle I had stumbled into, or a disaster waiting to ignite? The first morning at the cabin, Appalachian light spilled through the window, painting the wooden floor in soft gold. I opened the door to the porch, cool air rushing in, laced with the scent of pine and damp earth. Molly stepped into the yard, tail swaying gently. Ranger still lay curled in the corner, amber eyes flickering beneath the fading glow of the fire. I carried a small bowl of water mixed with a little milk, set it down in front of him. Ranger lifted his head, nose trembling. At first cautious, then suddenly desperate. His tiny tongue swept over the bowl, drinking as if the water might vanish. I sank to my knees, my chest tightening. How many days had he survived out there? No water, no milk, no one to lean on. When the bowl emptied, I dropped a few pieces of dry food inside. Ranger hesitated, glancing toward Molly. The old dog had returned, standing a few steps away, eyes fixed on the bowl. Ranger lowered himself, backing away, waiting until Molly leaned in to sniff. Only when she pulled back did he dare eat. I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. A small sign, but clear. Ranger knew how to yield. The days that followed found their rhythm. In the mornings, when I opened the door, Molly ambled down the steps and Ranger wobbled after her. His leg still weak, his stride clumsy, but there was curiosity in his gaze now. He nosed pine needles, pressed his muzzle into the grass, pawed at damp earth as if discovering for the first time that the world was larger than Dallas pavement. Molly stayed cautious at first. Each time Ranger came too close, her ears rose, a low growl rumbling. But when he lowered his head and sat still, she turned away. No fights, no explosions. Just distance slowly bridged by patience. At night, I sat by the fire, tea cooling in my hands. Ranger curled on the rug, eyelids heavy, breath still fast but steadier. Molly rested nearby, head on her paws, eyes half shut, though her ears stayed sharp. And sometimes, when Ranger stirred closer, I caught her tail twitch, a faint unconscious rhythm. One night, Ranger shivered in a nightmare, legs jerking, soft whimpers breaking from his throat. I reached out to soothe him with my hand. Molly rose too, stepping closer. My chest tightened, bracing for a snarl. But no. She lowered her head, sniffed gently at his scruffy coat. The whimpers faded. Ranger sighed, pressing nearer, seeking her warmth. In that moment, I nearly forgot to breathe. In the worn silence of the cabin, I saw something fragile but real take shape, an invisible thread beginning to weave between them. On the 5th day, I caught Ranger stumbling after Molly in the yard. He toppled over, rolled once, then scrambled back to his feet, chasing again. Molly turned, staring at him with a mix of annoyance and surprise. Then, unexpectedly, she barked once, short and sharp. Ranger froze, tongue lolling, eyes shining. No growl, no tension, just quiet acceptance. That night, when I stirred awake, the fire had burned low. I turned and found Ranger no longer alone. He was curled against Molly's chest, the two of them breathing together, steady and calm. I stood there in the half-dark, my eyes stinging. This cabin had once been only me and Molly, two lonely souls keeping each other company. But now, another heartbeat had joined us. It was no longer just a test. It was the beginning of a miracle. That afternoon, clouds pressed low. The air grew heavy, wind rolling down from the Appalachians like a storm warning. I was splitting firewood on the porch, sweat beading on my forehead. Molly lay stretched across the steps, eyes half shut, while Ranger darted through the yard, barking sharply at a squirrel dancing along a pine branch. That bark made me laugh. No longer the feeble whimper of his first days, but a voice with strength, hoarse yet bold. For a fleeting moment, I felt relief, as if the hardest part was behind us. Then silence dropped. I looked up. The yard was empty. Ranger was gone. The axe slipped from my hand, my chest pounding. "Ranger!" No reply. Molly snapped upright, ears stiff, nose working. A growl rumbled low in her throat before she bolted toward the trees. I grabbed the flashlight from the porch and ran, my voice shattering against the forest canopy. "Ranger! Ranger!" Darkness fell faster than I expected. The Appalachian woods swallowed the light. My beam wavered across tree trunks, carving the night into restless shadows. Each gust in the branches whispered like something conspiring to smother hope. "Ranger!" My voice cracked, torn raw in my throat. Molly surged ahead, her bark echoing once before vanishing. I pushed forward, heartbeat frantic, shoes crunching dry leaves like nerves snapping under weight. Images clawed through my mind. A hungry coyote, a hawk's talons, or simpler still, the mountain cold pressing the breath from his frail body. I stopped, collapsed against a tree, and chilled sweat streaming down my back. My whisper broke like glass. God, I was wrong. Then, through the dark, a sound rose. Thin, fragile, not a bark, not a howl, a cry. High-pitched, strangled, like a child weeping in the night. I lurched up. "Ranger!" Molly bolted and I stumbled after her, lungs on fire, heart near bursting. The flashlight shook wildly in my hand, flaring across weeds and rusted fences. And then I saw him, Ranger. His small body was tangled in a web of barbed wire, thrashing weakly, hind legs caught. His coat was streaked with dirt and leaves. Amber eyes blown wide, drowning in panic and pain. I dropped the light, fell to my knees. "Ranger, steady. I'm here now." I clawed at the twisted wire, biting into his skin. Rusted steel sliced my hands open, blood slicking my fingers, dripping down. I didn't feel it. Only his wheezing breath filled my ears. Ranger whimpered, eyes locked on mine. No words needed. I knew. The same plea as before. Don't leave me. I gritted my teeth, heaved with everything I had. Metal screeched. A sharp snap cracked the silence. The last strand gave way. I pulled him free, crushing him against my chest. His body burned like coals, shaking, but alive. Molly stood close, released a bark so deep it rolled through the forest. It wasn't just a signal. It was a declaration. We found him. He belongs here. I sank into the earth, holding Ranger so tight, my blood soaked through my collar. Tears blurred my sight. My voice broke into gasps as I whispered, "You're safe now, Ranger. I swear. I'll never let you be alone again." He stirred, his head pressing into my neck, breath shallow but steadier. In that moment, everything else vanished. The dark, the blood, the wind's howl. Only the fragile, stubborn heartbeat pounding against mine remained. Step by step, we made our way back to the cabin. Molly led, and I carried Ranger in my arms. Each footfall pressed a vow into the Appalachian ground. I would guard him with everything I had left in this life. After that night, after I pulled Ranger from the barbed wire, everything changed. He was no longer the trembling pup clinging to me in Dallas. In just a few weeks, Ranger grew so fast it left me stunned. His chest broadened, muscles tightened beneath a sleek black and tan coat. His steps no longer wavered. Each stride landed sharp, powerful, like a young warrior learning the weight of his own strength. Every morning, when I opened the door, Ranger shot into the yard like an arrow. He chased the wind, barked into the forest, and slammed his paws into the ground with a pounding rhythm. The first time I heard his bark in full, deep, resonant, no trace of the frail whine from a life once dangling at the edge of death, I laughed, but the laughter died quickly, because behind that vitality I saw something else. Instinct. In his play with Molly, Ranger stopped knowing when to quit. He leapt onto the old dog's back, tugged her ear, not playfully, but with the weight of dominance. Molly growled, threw him off. Minutes later, he lunged again, eyes blazing, chest heaving with a fire he didn't yet know how to control. One afternoon, as I split wood, I heard a savage barking behind the cabin. I dropped the axe and ran. My heart froze. Ranger had cornered Molly against the fence. He stood tall, body taut as a drawn bow, gaze locked on the aging dog. No blood, no bite, but his body spoke a language clear as thunder. "This is my ground," I shouted. "Ranger, enough!" The sound cut through the air. Ranger froze, eyes flickering with conflict. Then he lowered his head, stepped back, letting Molly slip past. She didn't look back, only walked inside, tail down. I sank onto the porch, called Ranger over. He came slowly, pressed his head into my palm. I stroked his back, but the weight in my chest grew heavy. I knew what I had saved in Dallas was no longer a fragile pup. This was a Doberman rising into the nature it was born with, to guard, to claim. By night, when the fire burned low, Ranger no longer curled beside me or Molly. He prowled the cabin's edges, his steps silent but sharp. More than once, I woke to find him at the door, body coiled, ears erect, amber eyes glowing in the dark. He was no longer the shadow begging for warmth. He was becoming the sentinel of the night. Molly changed, too. Her patience thinned. When Ranger shoved into her bowl, she didn't just growl, she bared her teeth, her stare sharp enough to cut. I feared the day a rumble would turn into a bite. I sat alone on the porch, the mountains drowned in twilight purple. Ranger lay a few steps away, body taut, eyes tracking every sound in the woods. Molly lay off to the side, turned away, a distance between them that had never been there before. And me, caught between two worlds, drifting further apart each day. A question gnawed at me, one I didn't want to face. Why did I save him? To cage him in four walls? To smother the fire roaring inside him? Or to one day force Molly to pay the price for my choice? I looked at Ranger. In the dying light, his body was all strength, his eyes blazing. But deep inside them, I still caught glimpses of that frail pup trembling against my jeans in Dallas, a fragment of memory that clenched my heart tight. I laid my hand on his head. Ranger lifted his face, pressing against me, breath hot and steady. And I knew time was running short. Someday soon, I would have to choose. That morning began differently. The silence around the cabin was unusual. No sound of Ranger bolting out the door like an arrow. No soft steps of Molly across the porch. Only a stillness, heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath with me. I opened the door. The golden light of dawn washed the valley. Molly stepped out slowly, tail swaying, eyes half closed. But Ranger stood still on the porch. He didn't bark. He didn't leap. He only stood there, his body drawn tight like an arrow pulled to the bowstring's end. His amber eyes weren't on me, not on Molly. They were fixed on the woods. I knew. In that instant, I knew. He hadn't slept the night before. I'd heard his paws circling the cabin, claws scraping the wood, long sighs spilling into the dark. He was no longer the pup curled by the fire. He was a grown Doberman, instinct boiling, hunger pulling him towards something beyond my reach. I stepped onto the porch, stood beside him. Molly came too, but kept her distance. Ranger turned to look at me, and his eyes were different. No desperation, no pleading. Only a light, calm, strong, and aching, that of one ready to leave. I knelt, my hand trembling as I rested it on his head. "Ranger," my voice broke. "I saved you. But the truth is, you saved me too. From the emptiness, from the silence that used to crush me every night." He pressed his head into my palm, no longer trembling, only steady warmth. I whispered again, each word slicing deeper. "I want to keep you here, to protect you forever. But I understand now, love is not a chain. Love is giving you the wings to live the life you were born for." Molly sat beside me, tail flicking gently, as if she too listened. Ranger lifted his paw and laid it on my knee. The gesture stole my breath. It was Dallas all over again, the day he clawed at my jeans, begging for life. But today, his paw didn't shake. He placed it calmly, like a farewell. I bent forward, crushed him against me, tears spilling. "Go, Ranger. These woods are yours. Freedom is yours. I won't hold you anymore." Ranger raised his head. His amber eyes locked with mine as if nothing else in the world existed. Time stopped. I could hear my heart hammering. Then he turned away. One step, two, muscles rippling beneath his sleek coat. He walked like a warrior, never glancing back. But just before the forest swallowed him, Ranger stopped, looked over his shoulder. Just once. Those amber eyes caught the morning sun, shimmering with pure freedom. No fear, no weakness, only the fullness of what he had become. Maybe it was thanks. Maybe it was goodbye. Or simply the truth. Ranger had finally become himself. And then he vanished among the trees. I stood frozen, hollow. Morning wind swept through the valley, carrying the rustle of leaves like a chorus of farewell. Beside me, Molly pressed her head against my leg, a soft whimper spilling out. I knelt, held her, and wept like a child. The cabin suddenly felt larger, emptier than ever. The silence would return at night. But now it carried a memory I would never lose. The light in Ranger's eyes that final morning. I sat on the porch, staring into the place he disappeared. Through the ache, I understood something true. Love was never possession. Love was given a chance. Love was letting a life find its own path, even if that path no longer had me in it. And strangely, in that loss, I was no longer alone. Ranger was still here, not in the cabin, not on the porch, but in me. In the memory of that fragile heartbeat clawing at my leg in Dallas, growing into the fire of freedom I had just witnessed. I whispered, voice breaking into the wind, "Go, Ranger. You're no longer a shadow. You're yourself." Above, the Appalachian sun rose higher, pouring down brilliant light, and in that glow I saw clearly, sometimes the only way to hold on is to let go. There are goodbyes that shatter the heart, but there are also goodbyes that give two souls the chance to truly live. Ranger had come to me as a shadow, trembling, clinging to my leg in Dallas, and he left me as a flame, free, fierce, carrying a piece of my heart in every step. I learned that love is not holding tight. Love is giving away. Love is watching a fragile life find its own way, even when that way leaves us behind. If this story touched you, please leave a small trace of kindness. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the journeys ahead. The stories of life, of hope, and of second chances. Every subscription is a promise that we will keep telling the stories of lives once invisible, but always deserving to be seen, to be loved, and to live.